And we're live.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a City Council budget meeting for health and public safety. Members of the committee are myself in the chair, Vinny DiGilio, Mike Esposito, Farley Santos, Paul Rotello. We also have some ex officio members. And I'm going to go through the list. If I happen to miss you, when I'm done, just please shout out so that we can note your presence. Colleen Stanley, John Esposito, Roberto Alves, Fred Visconti, Richard Molinaro, Jack Knapp.
And I noticed that Ben is trying to get in. Can we let him in?
I don't have him in the waiting room.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll keep watching.
I have
Okay.
Frank Salvatore.
Good evening, whoever said hi to me.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Is there any other council people, ex officio council people that I haven't identified?
Yeah, Bob Taberside.
Okay. And
Mike Henry.
Councilman Perkins,
Yep, Perkins.
anybody else?
Yeah, Councilman
Mike
Henry.
Okay, Mike Henry, Councilman Mike Henry. Think I've gotten everybody. I'm going to try to follow the format that we went through last night. Hopefully we will be a little quicker. I think everybody would like that. I'm going to have our Director of Finance give a little talk beforehand on each department. Then I'll go to the committee members for any questions, the ex officio members for any question, and the department heads if they have anything that they would like to say. And then we'll just move from department to department on the schedule. We got the summary. Also, just remember, if you're not speaking, to keep yourself muted. It's important, just as we go through the whole process, it makes it easier for everybody. All right, David, the first item on our list is the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my screen.
And this is on page 204.
Yes, on page 204, we have the police department. And as proposed by the mayor is $19,276,000. That's an increase of just over $700,000. The primary drivers are, as usual in the public safety side of things, especially in the PD, is in salaries and salary related line items, as you'll notice here. We don't have a contract, but we have built the anticipation of a settlement of a contract into this. You'll see that in a couple different line items. So you'll see it up here in regular salaries. You'll see it in other earnings. Regular salaries also includes their promotional anticipated promotions and other scheduled scheduled promotions like that. So, they always get I don't want to call them steps, but their rank increases at that time too. So the most notable decrease you'll see is in workers' comp, as we've seen throughout the presentations, various other presentations, but and you'll see an decrease in some of the communication and equipment lines. That's because we increased on the CIP, their CIP has increased as well. So they were in the PD side, they did put a big request in there for various equipment, which we then moved a lot of that over into CIP. So you may notice that in what they requested has dropped quite a bit in the equipment side, but that was covered on the CIP side. But that you'll notice is again a lot of shifts and changes, such things such as clothing, dry goods, and things like that. Those are contractual line items. Sick leave, all contractual. Holiday pay, contractual. Educational stuff, contractual. So, and I guess that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, David. Would any of the committee members any of the committee members have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. DiGilio.
Through you to Chief Ridenour, I am just scanning the book with the different accounts. Something that jumps out to me under other earnings, and maybe this is for David also.
Yep.
Under other earnings, it was proposed by the department of 10,000, and it was adjusted by the mayor 279,000. I was just curious the shift to that 269,000 or so.
If it's all right with the chief, I'll address that. This goes with, we have to put something in anticipation of upcoming negotiations. We don't know what they're going to be. We haven't, we're just starting that. So we kind of put something in there, in anticipation of those things. Because as you know, there are several lines throughout the negotiations. So hopefully this is a placeholder for some of those other items.
So it sounds like, so just so I understand, make it clear. So it sounds like that's a line item placeholder for future union contract negotiations.
Yeah, and the costs associated with that.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, either to, well, actually to Chief Ridenour, I do see line 5300, 2075 training courses. Chief proposed $68,500 and the mayor proposed $39,000. So I'd like to ask the chief, with $39,000, the difference there, what kind of training will the officers not be partaking in? And I question that just because of the environment that we're living in, the kinds of training that I think are so important for police officers at the moment. I'm curious as to what that difference is and if it's going to affect any kind of training of our police officers right now.
Thank you, Councilman. The main training is not going to be affected by that. The reason we asked for that money, that additional money, was in anticipation of tuition fees for academy seats. I mean, we are going to have some retirements and new hires, and depending on which academy we send them to, there could be a tuition fee as much as $3,800 per recruit. So we really don't know. I can't really say with any certainty at this point whether or not that's going to be enough, but the relationships that we do have with the satellite academies, like there's 2 officers in an academy now, then they're not charging us anything for that. So, and then another satellite academy we have, the tuition fee is much lower. But if they go to the Post Academy in Meriden, then that's the higher tuition fee. So we'll manage. That's really the bottom line, is that we'll manage.
Could you follow up, if I could?
Yep.
Is there a line item here that directly relates to the trainings that you do consistently with your police officers?
No, nothing specific, because a lot of that is mandated by the Police Officer Standards and Training Council.
That's what I figured. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, one more question for me here.
Sure.
Line item 5700, 2795 other. I see that the department proposed $120,500, and it was cut back by the mayor to $4,650. Mr. St. Hilaire, could you explain to us what that is?
Sure, that's what I was mentioning earlier.
Okay.
Really, the equipment line that you see in their operational budget is really miscellaneous small type of equipment, not
Okay.
not major equipment. So you'll see in their CIP some significant changes from the previous year. And the reason why we do that is because in the CIP, it goes beyond the 12 months. It gives them more time to spend. And then, of course, we revisit it every year to see if it needs to be replenished. And oftentimes, whatever we put in there may not be enough to cover everything. And so it's a repeatable program. So and we won't run that through the operational thing because it could vary significantly. So if they, let's say they need $200,000, and you'll see this quite a bit in, let's say, the fire department, because they're outfitting all their officers, and so every 3 years or something like that. So we'll put an amount so that they have enough every 3 years. So we'll put a little bit in each year so that in 3 years they can do the full replacement.
Got it.
But if we do it in operational, it's the operational is kind of use it or lose it type of thing, and we don't want them to lose it. And so when we changed that years ago, and when we see that reoccur, we tend to move it over into CIP and call it a replacement program or something like that, and we know it's recurring. But yeah, that's what we typically do.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the very last thing is just, I looked at the table of organization and I see that from the 2020 budget, we had 161 folks, and now to this budget, we'll maintain that, but I do see some changes. For instance, clerk typists, we're going from 5 to 3.
Yeah.
But we're increasing, lieutenants and sergeants. I see that the number of police officers itself has stayed at 95. So I'm happy to see that we're not decreasing anything, Chief. But the very last question is, with the funds that you are being appropriated, are there any specific tasks or goals that you have for your department, areas to cover? I know we've talked about downtown and focusing on surveillance, speed issues and all that. We've talked offline about these things. Are there areas with this budget that you think you could get a little more help that would be beneficial?
As I've said, Councilman, we've always appreciated the support of the council and the mayor for public safety issues. So for us, it's not really a matter of the money. It's a matter of keeping our staffing at a certain level so that we can do some of those additional things. Now, right now, we're one below our budgeted number for this year. We're at 153, but as you know, several are in training in various stages, field training programs. So by the time they come out, we're probably going to have a few more retirements. So we're just going to continue on and hopefully get some more people ready for a September academy. But if our staffing is solid at 145, 146 or better, we'll be able to pay a little bit. I'll be able to backfill a couple of positions in our community conditions unit, and who pay more particular attention to the downtown area. There's more flexibility with some of the specialized units because they can walk, they can be on bicycles. We're not beholden to the contractual minimums for cars that the patrol division has. So it's really just a function of the staffing. We do have some people that are retiring that are under 65. Recently, we had one who retired. He signed up to be a special officer. I'm sure you're familiar with the special officer program. So that might give us some opportunities to put some officers in some strategic places to help with some of the quality of life issues.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Rotella.
through the chair to the finance director. Mr. St. Hilaire, where would we find body cameras? Would that be in that other line that you were talking about earlier, or would that be in
CIP?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And what would we be spending this year, if anything, on them? Are we gearing up with those?
The chief is actually working on that currently because we went to the council, I think, back in December or earlier on that, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it was part of the December one.
Right.
But
You'll see the note on our our council report for this year, for this month, that we've completed most of the training for the body worn cameras, and we have started deployment of them.
And then just to follow up on that, where are we storing the video? Are we doing it offline in the cloud, or are we doing it in-house?
Yes, it's that's why there's ongoing expenses through the CIP,
Okay.
because it is a cloud-based storage.
Yeah, that video storage can really add up fast.
Right,
It can
right.
be a
And
big.
we exactly. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to do that on our own server, so we're paying for the cloud storage. But it
Okay.
also will help a lot with easier redaction and retrieval.
Yeah, and I'm sure probably good backups and
Yes.
a lot of fail-safe stuff in there. Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
if I may, the first year typically, is a lot of implementation, although they may have the body cams out and they've done some initial training. There's always setup and monitoring, and, there could be some retraining and all this other kind of stuff. So, we look at it as it's not going to come into operation, the operational budget for not initially for a while, until it's really the program is fully set up and ongoing. So
Are we looking at a year, something like that?
oh yeah,
At least
18 months?
yeah,
at
you'll see it.
least.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. The other thing, to address the table of order, we caught that too. The chief caught that there was a couple of things that needed to be adjusted in that. The bottom line is fine, but the numbers really, there were really no changes in the table of order from last year to this year. Just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any ex officio council members have any questions?
Through the chair.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I'm sorry I was late. I was trying to get in for the last 10, 15 minutes, so I missed a lot of the explanation that was previously given regarding the police department. So I'm going to re-ask the questions, and again, even though they may have already been given. So I'm just going to raise my questions, and if David can just answer them quickly, and then I'll talk to the chief, my questions to him. Couple of things regarding the salaries. The increase is related to contractual or new officers?
It's contractual. And keep in mind, as part of the contract, they're gonna move up in rank, and with that, there's an added cost to that. Keep in mind, we don't have actually a new contract. We won't after July 1st. So we're in the process of negotiating.
No. It doesn't matter.
Did I freeze or did David freeze?
I
I
think David froze.
Somebody has their mic on.
I do.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, Ben, maybe we can come
I'll
back.
ask the chief. I'll ask the chief directly some questions until David comes back. Chief, I respect everything you do, but given what's happening, in Minnesota and Ohio and all the other things, what are we doing to mitigate that now? What training have you put in place to assure the public that that situation won't happen here? I looked at the training site here and it looks like it went down budgeted.
No, our training is always ongoing with our officers. So I'm not sure which line item you're referring to, because if you're talking about the training
Chief?
courses,
Yeah, that's what he's referring
that-
to, I believe.
yeah,
That
yeah.
question
No, all-
previously answered.
right, yeah. All training is not through those training courses. We have what we call our essential skills training, which talks about de-escalation. Where the state, I actually worked on a statewide use of force policy that will be rolled out hopefully sometime this year We have until January of 2022 to roll it out. It's going to be for all departments in the state to have a uniform policy, which highlights, the de-escalation and, use of force and what types of force you can use in certain situations. The post council also is responsible for crowd control training for us. So it's not just in those training courses. There's other stuff that we do in service with our personnel to ensure the proper treatment of our residents and visitors to this great city. And most importantly, it's about dialogue, and we continue to engage our community and listen to concerns and try to adjust accordingly to those.
Okay. The other question is regarding Taser training. Again, I know you mentioned a little bit, but are we also looking about changing the type of tasers we use to, like, I know there's the Taser 7 coming out. Is that something?
We just got brand new tasers within the last 6 months, I believe it is.
Is that the latest ones or that Taser 7 I'm hearing?
It was the latest model that they had at the time. I don't want to quote the actual model because I don't have it in front of me, but yes, we got brand new tasers and they actually sync up with the body cameras. So if a taser is drawn, the body camera is automatically activated.
Okay, and I'm sure training is occurring for all officers?
Yes, training has occurred for all of the officers who would be carrying the taser, for everyone in the field. And the body cameras I mentioned, I don't know if you heard me, the body cameras, we started rolling them out this week. The training has been completed for the body cameras, and so patrol division officers are rolling them out this week.
Detectives don't get trained and anybody like that?
Oh, detectives get trained, but there's only certain instances where they would be required to wear them, the body cameras. If they're out in the field and having to interact with the public, they would have to wear them. But for administrative duties or obviously conducting certain types of interviews where having the body camera could interfere with the investigation, they wouldn't be required to wear them. But we have a comprehensive policy on it.
Okay, thank you. I think David's back on. Just one more question for David.
David, are you out there?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Just one thing where it says other earnings. Can you just explain what that means?
Sure, that is part of, in anticipation of contracts. We have contract negotiations coming up. And you'll see that in a couple spots throughout the budget. We have to build something in as placeholders. So that's where we typically would put something like that.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that I have. Thank you, Chair,
right.
Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask the same questions twice. Thank you.
Yep.
I guess
Okay,
it's
any
time because I got bumped off. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Chair.
I think Mr. John Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Chief Rittenauer. On
Yes.
line item, there's several line items where we see proposed by your department and then proposed by the mayor where they're not exactly meeting eye to eye. Many are self-explanatory, industrial chemicals and, supplies and tools, but just under public safety, there's a $19,000 difference. What services are you going to have to cut?
Which account or which line item are you looking at?
I'm sorry, 5,700, 2755.
Okay. So yeah, we're talking about a $15,000 cut. Is that the one you're looking at? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, your department proposed 44,000 and the mayor's 25,000.
19,000.
Right. That is that public safety line is for repeat or repairs to the fleet not covered by Public Works and repairs to emergency warning equipment not covered by under warranty. And there's also a line item for Narcan. So at this point, depending, obviously repair costs are going to fluctuate, but we're confident that we probably can get the Narcan through at little to no cost through another source. But we put that in there, that we put that request for 44,000. 15,000 was for the Narcan because we know what the cost is. And so, but again, we think we can get it through another source. Our first supply we got through another source, but we just wanted to make sure we had a line item in there just in case we did have to pay for it.
What exactly is Narcan?
Narcan is when, someone, a drug overdose and you go and they're not coherent, and you can spray the Narcan that would, bring them back to consciousness.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Are you done, Mr. Esposito?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And
Any other ex officio members have a question?
Mr. Chairman,
Go right ahead, Mr. Perkins.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Chief Rittenhour.
Yes,
Chief,
sir.
I heard you mention earlier about when a taser is activated, it automatically turns on the body cam. What I want to know is if the body cam is turned on, would it automatically tether it to the camera in the patrol car?
The new system that we have, once it's fully implemented, yes, both cameras would be working together.
Okay.
We
That's
have
good to
this.
know.
Yeah, we have the same company. The old camera system we have, which is failing badly with the cars, doesn't sync up with the body cams. But we have begun installation of the new system into the cars, and they are the same company, and they will talk to each other.
Okay. Just a quick statement. I think it's important for people to know that, we're here where we are with this policing for a reason. And it's because of the work that the chief does and all of the officers of the department with the community policing. I mean, they know a lot of people's names. They know vehicles that folks drive. They're always doing surveillance and stakeouts. It's community police work. So appreciate that, Chief, and keep up the great work with you and your department.
Thank you.
Any other ex officio member? If not, Chief, do you have anything you'd like to say? Chief, before you say anything, I just want to echo what Mr. Perkins just said. I appreciate the efforts of you and your staff, your officers. And, it's a very difficult time that we're in this past year. And the way you lead the department, I think there's a tremendous amount of respect in the community. And just want to let you know that myself, just as an individual here in the community, really appreciate the efforts of not just you, but the entire department.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I think go ahead.
Nope, it's yours.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do think we have a lot of great officers, and we hope to continue that. I'm very excited about many of our new hires as well. And most importantly, I think we work as a team. And when I say a team, I mean including the mayor's office and the council with the support that you give us to be able to do our jobs. And it's continued on with this budget, and I hope it's going to continue for many years to come.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, I'm sorry, who's that?
Mr. Chair, Fred,
Yes, Mr. Visconti.
thank you. Just very quickly, I myself would like to thank the chief and his staff and officers for a job that certainly, as we all see what's happening in the country every day almost, that the job doesn't get any easier, but they're doing what has to be done. Training is there. And I just want to thank the whole department for doing a good job. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Visconti. Thank you, Chief. All right, we're going to move forward if there's no other questions to the fire department. Chief Ford, I believe, is here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here. If we can we take care of the animal control, and then we can let Chief Rittenhour and his team, enjoy the rest of the night?
Yes, if
that's okay with
Chief
you.
Ford, if you'll just let us move that for the time being so that we can do that.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Animal control.
Thank you, Kevin. I owe you a coffee.
Okay, animal control is, as you know, that's in its own other fund. And the amount proposed, or the amount proposed by the mayor is $320,000. That's about $12,000 more than the adopted budget for the current year. And primarily, the biggest driver for that is because we have a new building, and we really don't know, how much that building is going to cost in terms of cleaning and other maintenance and whatnot. Thankfully, through the kind, generous donation from Mr. Levy and in honor of his late wife, we're very, very grateful for that. It's a beautiful facility. If you haven't been over there, I encourage you to get over there. But we want to make sure it's well maintained, and so we put some extra money in there for that purpose. The transfer from the general fund did increase by about 15,000 because there was a reduction of interest earnings in that fund as well. I think we discussed that last night. There's some minor adjustments throughout, but of course, a slight increase in the salary lines.
Are there any questions on this item? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to our next line item.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
All right, next time you gotta be a little quicker.
I thought you were on the committee first. I was waiting.
Okay,
That's what I was waiting for.
Okay.
Just a quick question to David. On the animal control, it just says public safety. Does that include the wages and everything? Salaries, wages for the officers and everything?
Over at the animal control, yes.
That's all inclusive.
Yes.
Wages, the police officers' wages, the staff wages, everything, taxes, insurance, everything.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Does anybody else have a question on this item? Okay, then we will try again to leave this item, and we'll move on to the fire department.
Okay.
We'll have David start, and then we'll get through the council members, and then we'll get to you, Chief Ford.
All right, page 210 in the budget book. And the fire department's budget, as proposed by the mayor, is $14,506,000. That's a slight decrease of about $5,300. The biggest drivers of that decrease are really in the line items that the fire department doesn't really control. We decreased workers' comp by just under $30,000, and we decreased electricity by, I think, $6,000. So roughly, let's just call it $35,000. And and certain other items went up. The other decrease was educational credits by just under 20,000. And we had some increases in salaries and overtime and building structures and some minor other increases and decreases.
You're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any committee members that have any questions regarding the fire department?
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Go ahead, Mr. DiGilio.
Thank you. Through you, and it maybe David's best to answer this. Otherwise, Chief Ford. Just two things jump out. One is the under the 5,600 electricals, 5,600 25 to 40 and change. Electrical service, heating service, and motor fuel. They were all proposed as zero and then inserted by the mayor. And then further down on volunteer fire liability insurance, that was proposed at 62 and zeroed out. So I just want to know if there were oversights or just shuffled to appropriate GLs.
The electrical, proposed by the department was zero.
Right.
As I said, we fill those lines in there. We typically we would put a plug in for the department. We probably just missed that plug.
Okay.
And for the training area, that's paid for, I'm sorry, for the volunteer
Liability
insurance line, thank you. That's paid for out of the internal service fund.
Okay, so just a shuffle. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That was-
yeah, shuffle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, Mr. Santos.
Thank you. Chief Ford or David, I see the proposed salary, first line item there.
Yep.
10,747,800. The mayor proposed 10,601,630. That's a difference of 146,700 or $170. So could you explain that? Where is that difference coming from? And then I got one more question after this.
Yeah. The number that you see right there is based upon the people that we have currently employed and their anticipated promotion over next year. And it also takes into account the vacancies or the people that are the positions that are vacant are certainly at a lower rate than people that were occupying that position previously. So that's about half the amount. So it really depends on when the budget was submitted and then when we actually came up with that amount. So there's actually a 2 to 3 month time difference, between those two time periods. And chances are there's a couple people that probably retired during that time or put in their retirement papers during that time.
Okay.
That's why you may see that. So somebody, a person may have retired who's earning 100,000. We may hire somebody at 50.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, through you, if I could, line item 5,300, 2075 training courses. I see that Chief Ford proposed 121,900. Mayor proposed 88,606. Chief, why did you propose a higher amount? And is there any kind of training that's going to be cut because of that difference there? And I'm guessing it's going to be the similar answer to what Chief Ridenour explained. But I just want to make sure that for the safety of our firefighters, that we're getting all the training that they need.
No, thank you for the question, Councilman. No, we are definitely going to get all the training that we need. We have a very robust training division. Our training officer, Steve Rogers, is in charge of that. And he makes sure that all of the mandated training that we have to do, that's mandated by both the federal government or the state of Connecticut, is taken care of. We find ways to do it at a lower cost. Sometimes we do it in service when the rigs are, when the men are working on their regular tours, instead of sending them out, we'll bring the training into Danbury and do it in-house, and that saves us some money there. So we're not going to be losing any training or cutting any corners in that corner.
Good.
You don't have to worry about that.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, David.
One note on training. If there's specialized training as a result of COVID or whether it's directly or indirectly related to the handling of the pandemic or things like that, that would be covered by other funds. And so you may not see it within this. I know we're all concerned about, we kind of anticipate additional training related to that. So that, we do have CARES Act money that would cover that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, please. We have government grants that we get through FEMA, and we use that money for training. We also have, we're very lucky in Danbury. We have some of the citizens, some of the businesses, they donate money towards us, and we use that money for training and equipment as well. So that will supplement this line.
And would you show that here in the budget, David, if you got some grant money that way?
That's covered in the special revenue fund.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Santos. Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Hold on one second, if you would. Mr. Rattello, you're good? Okay. Go right ahead, Mr. Salvatore.
This is probably to the chief. the line other benefits, educational credits, I see that's for college programs, certification requirements, and tuition reimbursement. You had asked for 128,000, and it was the mayor proposed 98,000. And when you do a 7-year look back, the fire department over 7 years has spent $113,000, while the past 3 years, that's actually been a little higher at 114. Is this due to any contractual changes with the last contract? Is tuition reimbursement going down? Or is that just taking the temperature of the department and seeing who's in courses and stuff? Because I know, like, to rise to the ranks, there are some educational requirements, especially to get to where you are. So that's my question.
Yes, sir. Along the lines of what David was alluding to earlier, when we have senior members retire out, they're at a higher pay rate, obviously, as we talked about earlier, but usually these are the people that have more extensive training, certifications, things like that. And they're replaced with younger members. So for instance, right now we have 4 young gentlemen in the Connecticut Fire Academy, probationary firefighters. And someone like that wouldn't have as much extensive training, wouldn't have the certifications that we would have to pay for, and, you know, possibly not a college degree. We also are getting more of our recruits are coming out of the military at this point, and they're coming on without college degrees. And I don't mean that in any detrimental way. Our service men and women are our biggest asset in the department, but they're coming in without a college degree that would require a stipend for them. So much like the salary issue earlier, it says senior people retire and younger people come in at the bottom. The cost is lowered by that.
Wouldn't, though, the younger recruits need education? I'm taking this line as being, tuition reimbursement, moving up the ladder, obviously like to maybe fire instructor or inspector courses and stuff like that. Is that what this line is for?
No, not necessarily. So we have stipends that we would pay. So for instance, if you had a bachelor's degree in certain fields like fire science or something like that, you get a stipend for having that. And that money is like that. We don't pay for the degree itself per se. It's to try and encourage people to get an education or get outside education. The training you're alluding to, we would do mostly in-house with some of those training funds and the donation funds and the grant money that we spoke about earlier.
All right, thank you. I'm just,
All right.
I must be confused because that section 4 said tuition reimbursement. So that's why I'd asked that question, but good answer. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I'm done, Chair. Mr.
thank you. Any other ex officio members have questions for
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Molinaro?
Yes, I just want to follow up on that educational credits with the chief, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Will that loss of 20,000 or approximately 20,000, will that hurt any of your people?
No, sir. Anyone who currently has a degree is getting the stipend that they're entitled to. They would not lose that. It's contractually obligated. And the reimbursement that the former councilman was talking about, that's for, we encourage people to take college courses outside, and we pay a portion of the reimbursement, but we're just not seeing as many coming in right now, requests to do that right now, because a lot of the training we do, again, is specific to the fire service within the department, and more members are availing themselves of that rather than going to, say, WestCon or Naugatuck Valley or anywhere else to get like a college degree, if you will.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes,
And
sir.
I also want to commend you on the job well done, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Molinaro. Other comments, other questions here?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chianese?
I thought Councilman Visconti had a question, but maybe not. Okay, I didn't want to cut in front of him. My question is just dealing with, I don't know if it's David or Chief Ford can answer it. The new storage facility, is that going to be completed this year, and that's going to be paid through the capital budget? The one that's adjacent to Station 26.
Yes, so that's coming out of the capital budget. We have a line for that that's already been established. And right now, the architects have just finished up the design process on that. And we're waiting for the final FAA approval for that building because it's close enough to the airport that we need FAA approval. Now, we've spoken to the FAA and we don't anticipate any problem with that because it's attached to an existing building and not going to be much higher than that building if at all. So the FAA is probably going to approve that. It shouldn't be an issue. Once we get that FAA approval, we'll go out to bid with the bid documents that the architects have prepared. But by attaching it to the building, the existing building, Station 26, and tying into the utilities there, the sewer, water, the oil separator that exists there, and all the other utilities, we've managed to keep the cost of that building very low. So it should not be an issue.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I have is the marine response to the fire department of the boat and the build-out of the dock, is that coming out of your budget or is that a capital expenditure as well?
That's an established capital line that is shared right now by, since the boat is not a fire boat per se, it's a public safety boat. It's a shared asset between the police, fire, and EMS. So all three departments have a line that we would draw for that, for both the boat itself and for the dock, the build out of the dock where it will be stationed in Lake Candlewood. That money's in a separate account and it's already been allocated for. We're coming in well under budget on that whole project. The boat should be in about a month and a half, and the dock should be ready to receive it at that time.
Yeah, follow up to that. Is that a new program within the fire department, police department? Is that new, fairly new?
Not necessarily, if you want to look at it that way. Right now, the fire department has a robust water rescue program. In the wintertime, we have ice suits that we wear. So if, say, a kid was out skating on the lake and he fell through the ice, we would go out and rescue them wearing ice suits that would protect us if we had to go into the water. In the summertime, we have a small Zodiac boat. It's an inflatable boat that if, say a water skier was injured or something was in the water, we would go out and rescue them in the Zodiac boat. The problem with that is that it's a small boat. You can only fit maybe one person, one victim in it with the firefighters who would go out. The new boat is going to be big enough to allow us to get to people quicker, get them out of the water, get more people in it, and to bring, say, a paramedic with us from the EMS department, or if we need a police officer, that we could bring police officers on board with us too. So like I said, it's a shared asset, and depending on the nature of the call, we'd be able to fit members of all three agencies if we had to.
Okay, so it's only used based on a call. You won't go out on patrols or anything like that.
No, sir, that's not in the plans right now. It's going to be a special call item, just like we do now. If we get a call for, like say a water skier down or somebody injured in the lake, we put our Zodiac boat in the water right now. This boat will be in the water, but it will be docked at the right near the town park at the south end of the lake there. And we would just, the closest engine company is being trained to be the operators of that boat. They will go out and they will operate it and go out and effect the rescue of the person who's in the water.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chinis.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair-
Visconti, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Visconti, you had a question?
Just a couple of quick ones, if I may, to
Yes.
Chief Ford.
Yes.
Chief, where do we stand right now as far as personnel? Are we close to being fully loaded with personnel, or where are we?
Yeah, yes, sir. We're pretty much so. As I alluded to earlier, we have 4 probationary firefighters in the Connecticut State Fire Academy right now. They should be graduating in about a month or so, and then they'll be joining us, in the fire department, working in the firehouses. And right now, we'll be pretty much at full capacity. We do have some retirements coming up in the next couple of months, but we're prepared to handle that. We're going to be giving some promotional exams. We're going to be giving our deputy chief test in May, and the fire chief. As you all know, I'm the interim chief. I'm filling in right now in this spot. But in May, we're going to be giving the boards and panels for the chief's position. And then we hope to give a captain's and a lieutenant's test possibly in June or July to fill any openings in those levels. So as far as our complement of personnel, we're doing fine with that.
Thank you. One more quick question, if I may, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Have you been working with the volunteer departments in regards to the consolidation that they've been looking to do?
Yeah, so what's going on with that is Chief Meehan, one of my deputy chiefs, is working with them. One of the concerns is to how to they're used to working as separate companies, if you will, and they've all come together, and I think it's a great plan, the consolidation. And we're trying to figure out how to effectively use that manpower on our emergency scenes. Chief Meehan is working with the Volunteer Council, Chief DeMuro, Charlie Coakley, all those guys, and we're trying to come up with protocols to work on our emergency scenes with the 2 battalions that were formed out of these separate companies.
Thank you. And Chief, I hope you're around for a long time. I've heard nothing but good words about you. So
Thank you.
keep
That's
going.
very kind.
Thank you, Chief.
If I have any success at all, it's because I'm surrounded by a great team here in the fire department. You guys, we're very lucky to have the support that you give us, but I'm very lucky to have the people in this department because I have a very deep bench here.
Thank you, Chief. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Chief Ford.
Yep.
Chief, just a quick question. I heard you mention about the Zodiac and the nearby house being trained to go out for a rescue. My question is to the chair, how would fire suppression on the water be handled? The Zodiac seems a little underpowered.
Right. So right now, Councilman, we don't do fire suppression per se on the water. And that was one of the weaknesses. The Zodiac boat was basically just to go out if there was a swimmer down, or, say somebody was water skiing and broke their leg and they were in the water. We would go out with the Zodiac to do that. The new apparatus, this new boat that we're getting, will have fire suppression capabilities. It has a pump on it and it can spray water. So we will be able to do fire suppression if there was a boat fire, let's say.
Okay, follow up. And it would have the ability to basically pump or suck water from the lake itself and spray onto the fire.
Yes. So if you're talking about, like, say there was a boat on fire in the middle of the lake, it actually has, like, let me just, in layman's terms, like a water cannon on the front of it that could be used for that. Or if we were working in a remote area where we didn't have access to hydrants or anything like that, we could actually connect a supply line to this boat, and the boat would suck water out of the lake, let's say, and then push it through supply lines out to the fire engines and supply them water that way, if we ever needed to do that.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, and just so you know, Councilman, the boat, the way we designed it, it's designed to try and fulfill the missions of all 3 departments. It's going to help for the EMS department to treat people on the boat and then quickly get them to the shore to be received by the ambulance. It's going to help with the police department if they have to have their dive team go out for any reason, the way it's designed. It has night vision and thermal imaging cameras on it so that if we had to go out and do a search even at night or in a storm, we could do that as well. So we're trying to equip this to foresee any possible emergency scenario that we can possibly conceive of and make sure it's ready for that.
Sounds like a great piece of equipment, and we're always happy to hear those success stories. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other
One quick question.
ex-officio? Yes, Mr. Molinaro.
To the chief. Chief, that sounds like quite a boat. Is it available for pleasure cruises?
Yes, and it will. And one of the big pieces of equipment on it is a pina colada machine. So you'll have a great day.
That makes
Okay.
it complete now. Thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? If not, Chief, is there anything that you'd like to mention or say about your budget?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the council and to the mayor's office for the continued support. You guys always take care of us in both the operating budget and the capital budget to make sure that we can fulfill our mission for the citizens of Danbury. And the membership, the men and women of the department are very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that. And I want to thank you for that support.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you for all your efforts. Okay, moving on. Emergency Services Dispatch. David?
Yes. Emergency Services Dispatch, page 212 in your budget book. Proposed by the mayor, $2 million $906,000. And that's an increase of $191,000. I think I mentioned this in a couple of other points during the presentation. I think the overall budget presentation, this really represents a couple years of increases in the contract that we have for dispatch services. And the reason being because last year we didn't have the contract settled, so it wasn't included in the adopted budget. So this is really reflective of 2 years of increases. So really this year is half of that, and last year was half of that. So approximately. But this is for the 911 dispatchers.
Okay.
And the public safety advocates are in there as well.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from our committee members?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Just hold on one second, Mr. Visconti.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure there's, want us to know if there's any questions from the committee members. Okay, Mr. Visconti, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, to whoever's in charge, I don't know if it was Mr. Stiffen or what, about how we pay the dispatch center. Do we pay them, or how does that work?
No, but I'll address that. We pay our vendor, who is IXP, and IXP handles all the administration and the staffing and everything that goes on over there. So they're the ones that are responsible for that.
David, if I may, a quick follow-up. What about the dispatchers? Where does that payment come from?
That's right out of here. That's the $2,281,000. If you see this line right here, and this line is strictly for the dispatchers, and then we have the technical support for the dispatch center.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yep. So that's just the technical support for the dispatch. There's another line for public safety technical support, which was in the IT budget. And then we have the public safety advocates, which is right here.
Okay.
Hello. I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Tabersack.
Okay, I don't think I'm jumping too quickly to, I'm just looking at the public safety advocate.
Hold on,
I'm
we're not
looking-
there yet, though.
Oh, okay, all right, because I just heard the term mentioned, and I was wondering when there, okay, I'll just leave it, but I'm sure somebody else will bring it up, probably.
David, is that
Yeah.
within the, is that within there, the dispatch?
It's the second line, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, the public safety advocates, they're the folks that are part of the what they call the bubble down there, and they're taking in all calls, not the dispatch calls, but all the non-emergency calls.
Okay.
And now it probably I'm not sure why they probably shouldn't be directly in dispatch. They perform kind of the support role, but not a direct role. But they, whether they're here or somewhere in public safety,
Okay.
that's, we can move it around if you want, but the bottom line is it's still through an IXP contract. It really comes through reporting, however you want to report it.
So, Mr. Tabersack, this is the appropriate place for your question. I apologize for that.
Okay, yes, and David, I'm just looking at what was proposed and by the department and what was proposed by the mayor, and it seems like there's a discrepancy there. Worthwhile, I'm just mentioning why.
Yeah, that was the allocation of the contract. We're going off an old allocation, and then it really needed to be reallocated according to the new contract. That's probably what you're seeing.
Okay, well, I just looked at it. It was a sizable difference. That's what caught my eye. All right, thank you.
Yeah. So it just, you notice a reduction on the technical side in IT if you were attending last night. So there
Oh, yeah.
was a reallocation between all those. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taversack. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Tunis.
just really quick to David. The maintenance and repairs of the office equipment, I know it's pretty much flat or what was proposed from previous, but what's in there? Why is that so high? Is that an actual repairs or that's more new equipment?
no, that's more of replacement of equipment or any, not necessarily replacement. It could be new equipment. There's not a lot of repair of equipment because oftentimes the repair is, if it's broken, it probably will just get replaced, but it could be the maintenance of the equipment because all these things are on maintenance contracts. But that's what this refers to. And again, if they're software related, it would be in there as well.
This is the 311 and the 911 equipment, correct? Or just the 911 equipment?
This is all related to the dispatch center.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah, and if there's major equipment replacements, by the way, which we've done, we would run that out of the CIP. And they are up for a major equipment replacement. So,
David, is there a department head for that?
well, Frank works with the Public Safety Committee, and so that would be both chiefs on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from our council members? Hearing none, I'll move on. Building inspector.
Building inspector, page 216, your budget book. And as proposed by the mayor, $591,500. And that's a reduction of $27,500 approximately. And most of it is in in regular salaries, and it's really due to open positions and when we expect that we're going to fill those positions. So as you notice in our budget, we do expect to fill those positions at some point in the year, but it's going to be delayed slightly. So that's why it created some budgetary savings. And then there's some reductions in other lines throughout, and workers' comp, of course.
Any committee members have any questions? Any ex officio members have any questions? Does the department head, Mr. Newland, have anything to say here?
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Newland. We will move on to our next item, emergency management.
All right, emergency management. And if it's all right with the chair, if we can do the ambulance right after that, because it's the same
Yes.
person, Matt Casavecchia.
Yes.
Right. Emergency management. As you know, this was used to be civil prep. So civil prep is kind of the baseline, if you will. So we're using the same department number, but effectively we're looking at it like a new department, because we did go through every line item and pull out anything that was not directly associated with emergency management. And there was some line items that were, needed to be moved or just were put in there because they were in some way or fashion over the years, given the previous EMD, he felt that it should have been covered under there because it didn't make sense to be covered anywhere else. So we found someplace else to put it. So, so anyways, the mayor's proposed budget is $264,000. That's an increase over the previous year's budget of $109,000. And within this, there's still the $112,000 grant to the War Memorial. We put in some other amounts for miscellaneous. That we know that we need some flexible money for dealing with emergencies, and whether it's for if you displace anybody, or if they become displaced because of an emergency, then we are obligated to provide some assistance in that regard. And we didn't have a specific fund set for that. There'll be more about that at some other point. We do have some special revenue funds that have been sitting out there that need to be kind of consolidated and designated for such purpose. And we'll come back to the council on that. But in the past, we kind of just included it within a line in the health department, and then it kind of got it really wasn't used for that purpose, because nobody realized that it should have been used for that purpose, I think, over time. And so I think it was agreed by all, let's just put it under emergency management, and then we'll consolidate all these other funds and really have a good fund to deal with these type of things. Communication, as you know, we've increased communications dramatically, and we'll do so over the last year. And there's more to come on that, and I'll let Matt discuss that a little bit more. This 66, that is the contract that we have with the hospital for the new EMD, and that just about covers it.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Any of the committee members have any questions here?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
David, I didn't quite hear that line item for the hospital. Could you just repeat that?
That's this one right here. If you see outside services, the contract that we have with the hospital is $66,000, $5,500 a month.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at your screen's about a minute behind me. So just give me the number.
My apologies, $66,000.
Okay. All right. So not to make this too simplistic, but we're essentially giving them a check for $66,000, and they're covering Mr. Casavecchia's salary. And then these other things that are on here are things that we're still responsible for within the city. Is that basically correct?
Yeah, they're covering the function of EMD and making sure we're properly prepared and doing all that, so essentially they're performing that consulting services, so yes, we get Matt, but we get everything that comes with that expertise and everything he brings with him. So, but we need to provide the support to make that happen. And that's what the rest of this budget looks like.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, the emergency services is a $264,000 line item.
Yeah.
And the hospital part is, what are we looking at?
Yeah.
30% of that, something like that? 20%?
Yeah, it operates in a similar way like the ambulance fund. I mean, we ask them to perform a service, they perform the service, but we pay for the ambulances, and we cover the billing, we cover some of these other things that are necessary for the entire service to happen. So
well, I mean, just to be clear, the majority of the expenses of this department are still the responsibility of and under the control of the city of Danbury.
Well, yes, but
Right.
we work with Matt, and Matt still has to go through our process and our procedures and everything.
That I understand, but there was some concern that we were giving away the department and all that kind of stuff.
No,
and you know what I'm saying?
No.
We still, the lion's share of this department is still under the control of the city. That's my point.
The entire thing is because Matt is still
of course
part of the city, and this department reports into the mayor, and so and of course all departments have to follow the purchasing procedures, et cetera. So yeah.
So Mr. Chairman, if I could continue, how has this worked out? We've done it for I would say close to a year now, something like that. How are we doing on that?
Do you want me to answer that, or you want the?
No, that's not rhetorical. I'm serious.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I would.
Yeah, so it's going very, very well. Across he brought together all the different departments, and of course, he's identified those departments that need to work together when an emergency may be identified. So he's not bringing in all departments until they're needed. But we've had several events, and we have a core committee, and we get notices, and then when there is an event, we'll have meetings on that day, and to make sure that everybody is in place to move at a moment, and and that includes not just City of Danbury people, but that includes Eversource and anyone else that may be needed or may play a vital role in the response effort. And so, all these contacts and require constant attention and making sure everything is updated. And that has been so important, just that whole, touch point throughout, and the communication, consistent communication, and the follow-up afterwards. So we all know what happened and what we learned from it, and then move on. It's been a remarkable change of events here.
David, can I?
Okay,
David,
that sounds great.
Can I jump in for a minute there, David?
Absolutely.
Oh, through the chair.
Hi, Chief Ford again. I just want to say, I'm the new member of the team, but I'm very impressed with the whole way emergency management is done in this city. And especially, in general as a program, and specifically, Mr. Casavecchia does an amazing job as an emergency planner. Right now, he's restarted the whole local emergency planning committee program. And we've got department heads from a couple of different departments coming together and working to look at all the threats that this city could face and how we could mitigate them. And we're going through that. We're building a new EOC right now in City Hall. Anytime any kind of threat or event is coming up, he gathers us all together. This program is running really smooth. I've worked with New York City's OEM, Westchester County's, Yonkers. This is one of the best ones I've ever seen. You can be very happy. Honestly, Mr. Casavecchia is a consummate professional. If anything, I question when the man goes to sleep, because he's there 24/7. Honestly.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. And
I'm sorry to jump in. I just felt
that's fine.
That's
It's great to hear. Appreciate it. Thank you.
He's planning when there's not an emergency, and that's the critical thing. Because if you try to plan when there is an emergency, that's not the right time to plan. The time to plan is when there isn't one. So that's
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the ex officio members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Esposito, Mike Esposito.
to the finance director, if I may, please.
Yep.
This $112,800 is for the war memorial itself.
Yes, as you know, there are emergency shelter. They're designated as one of our emergency shelter, and they're one of the top. We use them. We've been using them as to give shots for COVID, but we've used them for the initially before the Super 8 for the homeless. So they're kind of our go-to. One of our go-tos. At least right now, they're our primary go-to, but Matt is also looking at other go-tos, so we're not so reliant on one. So that's critical to the the planning process as well, because you have to really have different places throughout the city that's closest to where people are, and that's the important factor.
Okay, thank you. What I was thinking was that I know we mentioned that we're going to upgrade the emergency center, but this has nothing to do with the emergency center.
Oh, they're trying to get the grant. I don't know if you heard that, but they Chick Volpe. This was in the newspaper, I think, about a month or two ago, about the possibility of getting a a big grant to help upgrade the War Memorial. I don't know the status of that right now, whether it made it through, but I'll have to check with Chick on that. Hopefully it made it through, but they were talking about, I think at least $1 million or $2 million on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. John, you're muted. Mr. Chair, sorry.
That's good. Thank you. Are there any other ex officio members that have any questions here?
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
question, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Cheney's.
Thank you. Again, through the chair, I know it was mentioned a few times about the new EOC center. So I would imagine that the operations are currently run out of City Hall, or is it run out of the hospital?
I'll address that initially. They're out of City Hall. The EOC, if you all know where the EOC is currently, it's right down the basement.
Mhm.
It's staying down in the basement, but it's not going to look anything like it did before. It's going to be modernized, and they determined that they, believe me, they went through and looked at different sites and different places, and that was the best site from a just from an overall perspective, cost, from a planning perspective. It just seemed to make the most sense. And Matt can certainly talk about that more. But it's going to be done in the basement. They're working on it as we speak.
So that leads me to my next question then. If it's out of City Hall, so I have to assume the building and structures related to the cost to renovate that office? And what about the electrical and the fuel? What's that for then, if it's out of City Hall? Because we normally don't allocate electric to fuel to departments.
No, we don't. But we do to help support some of the other temporary facilities that we might use.
Which are?
Which one is the War Memorial. If we're going to use it, like for example, the War Memorial, as you know, when we were using it, they had to keep it heated and at times when they normally wouldn't. And so that
Wouldn't that be? Isn't that what the $113,000 for?
Not really, because I mean that's they're incurring an extra variable cost that they would not have normally incurred, and so so that money is there for things like that. And there are other we do something over at the airport for storage and things like that. It can't be done in cold storage. So there's some minor items in there like that. And this goes back to some of the carryover from what was done before. And it may not seem like it made sense, but there's really no other place to put it because it's not really the airports, but we need some stuff over there for storage, and we can't keep it in cold storage because it would ruin whatever we had there. So that's why we put a little bit in there for to cover some of the these other costs.
Okay, thank you,
Mr.
David.
St. Hilaire. Any other members have questions? Mr. Casavecchia, would you like to comment or discuss anything related to your budget?
I want to really express my sincere appreciation to the mayor, David St. Hilaire, the fire chief, the police chief, and all really the department heads that worked in great collaboration these last several months since I've been installed in this position since September. It's been great, and I thank you to the council for your support. We're really centered and focused on preparedness activities to make sure that the city of Danbury is prepared in the event that we do have any type of emergency. This is all hazards planning, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you and the council.
Thank you, Mr. Casavecchia, for all that you do. We will move on, and we're going to go to the ambulance fund. Is that right, David?
Yes. All right. The ambulance is. I'm just going to shrink this for a bit. We don't need it.
Page 320,
Yeah.
321.
Yeah, the ambulance is on 321.
Yes.
And the ambulance budget, as proposed by the mayor, is $3,800,000. That's an increase of $150,000. And the, and that's kind of spread throughout. Yeah, we've got some increases in, the staffing, the costs of the staffing, and the communications, and really throughout just the whole service element of it. We do have some increases going over because of the we do need another ambulance. We kind of netted that against depreciation, so that's where we see some additional increases as well. But all in all, as you guys know, we do provide pretty wide coverage, and we're pretty proud of the kind of coverage that we do provide. We increased that coverage a couple of years ago to ensure that we, it was a shift in, I think it was Matt, you'll have to fill me out. I think it was a Friday night, like 2 to 4, but it was one of those gaps, and to ensure that we're providing the service at a point when we really noticed we're getting calls in and it needed to be provided. So we also put additional money in there because we have the new building over there, and like the Animal Control Center, we don't know how much it's going to be, so we threw some extra money in there for that. All right, and so between the equipment, and the new building, and then the costs related to staffing and the other services to support that, it's $150,000 increase.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Any committee members have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Rotello.
Through the chair to the Director of Finance. Mr. St. Hilaire, for a couple of years, we were moving in a dangerous direction, transporting people with a limited ability to pay. It's getting worse and worse on a yearly basis. Is that beginning to plateau? COVID must have been just off the charts. And yet the chief police had mentioned Narcan, and we all know what that's about. And I'm just wondering if is there light at the end of that tunnel, or is there still a tremendous amount of pressure on the ambulance fund?
Well, that's an important thing too. That's in this budget that we don't really talk about too much. Is you'll see a line in here for medical supplies. And that's really, and you don't see the full cost because it's loaded in through some of these other things, but we do have a line in here that's really for all the other departments. And they do make use of it. So whenever they need medical supplies, they'll contact Matt, and Matt will provide those medical supplies, whatever they may be. And, prior to COVID, because the medical supplies could have been PPE and all these other kind of things, but or they could be anything else. Narcan is a good example of those kind of things. So when I saw it in Chief Rittenhauer's budget, I said, the first thing I did is I called up Matt. I said, Matt, what about this? He said, well, we can get this for nothing, so not a problem. So I let Chief know that, and I said, just give Matt a call, let him know, and because that stuff can go bad if you're storing it. You can't, it's not a good idea to get too much of it, but you can get it as needed. Just coordinate it with Matt, and he'll, but that's the beauty of having the committee through the EMD. You develop these relationships, and you coordinate it through other aspects of your job. And so, but all those kind of things are kind of built into the ambulance budget. So we see that in there as well. Does that answer your question?
Well, non-paying parties also, David.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, the non-paying parties. As you know, our transports are down significantly this year. We're going to end up being about 1,000 transports down. And last year we're down about 700 transports, and each transport on average is about $425. That's one part of the impact to us. The other part of the impact is people are not, those that are delinquent are not, the collection rate is down. That's another factor. So, we are a full service, so whether they can pay or not is not really it's not we don't judge. I mean, that's why the rates are what they are, because we still have to provide the services, and whether they pay zero or they're able to pay the full boat, it all nets down to about $425 is what we get per transport. That's what it ends up being.
We all appreciate the fact that the ambulances are coming, whether you can pay or not, but it has an impact on the city's finances, that's for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And when you've got the government telling you, we don't care what you're doing or how you're doing it, you're only going to get this. And the insurance companies are taking a harder line on it, and they're getting more difficult. It really ties our hands, and it's a tougher and tougher job. And we have quarterly meetings, with the Matt and fire chief, police chief, and we talk not only about operational, but we talk about the financial and what can we do, and to try to improve all aspects of what we're doing. And so, and that helps out tremendously too, because one of the things that happened, a while ago is just the insurance reimbursements. There was a gap there. And so with those meetings, we got better coordination with the police and getting those reports over. And so we can go after the insurance company to get, when there's a traffic accident, to get the reimbursements. So, everything and anything we can do to help, get recoveries for the ambulance fund is good. We did get some CARES Act money last year, and a little bit this year. It totals about 300, but again, it's a drop in the bucket. Maybe some additional money's coming our way too. So
thank you, Director, and thanks for the efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. You're welcome. Any other questions from the members of the committee? Any questions from the ex officio members?
Mr. Chairman, Mike.
Yes, Mr. Mike Esposito.
To Matt Casavecchia, please, through you.
Yes.
Matt, I know we have, I don't know if we still do, but we had the exchange program with the EpiPens. Getting back to the Narcan, if Narcan is used by the PD, any way we can have an exchange with the hospital?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Esposito. And the short answer is yes. The program that we have developed really centralizes all of our emergency medical supplies up to and including personal protective equipment, organized through the hospital and through the ambulance program. So anytime a police officer would or a firefighter would use an EpiPen, or in this particular case, Narcan spray, that replenishment would be coordinated through my office and tracked accordingly.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Casavecchia, would you like to make any comment at this time?
I would. My sincere thanks and appreciation to the mayor and the director of finance and all those David has pointed out. Not only is this program centered around public safety and emergency preparedness, but also there's a strict focus on being fiscally responsible through the programs that David has mentioned. We look at every dollar that's spent out of the ambulance program to make sure that our staffing meets the demand. And we're up to our highest level of percentage of calls captured, 99%. For our municipality, that's pretty darn good. So anytime somebody picks up the phone and dials 911, there's a 99% chance that they're going to have a City of Danbury ambulance at their doorstep. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Casavecchia. Right, we will move on to our next line item, consumer protection,
Okay.
224.
Okay, 224. Consumer protection.
Yes.
Amount proposed by the mayor is 18,700. A small decrease of about $958 in part-time salaries primarily.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the ex officio members?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chianese?
thank you. Again, through the chair to David. I mean, that used to be a full-time position
Yep.
at one point, and now and that's been part-time for the last few years. Who is actually doing that? Is that still Dean doing that, or several people at this point?
Dean is still assisting the part-time person. I don't know who the part-time person is right now. But I don't know if Dean is online, but I don't know specifically who that part-time person is, but.
Because my next question is that enough to actually do all the weights and measures in town?
It's been
Well,
working
that's a
so
deep-
far. I mean, the revenues are still holding. And again, with Dean's guidance, it seems to be working.
Okay, I mean, if Dean's on there, he can opine as well. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'm here.
go right ahead, Mr.
Yes, Ben,
Esposito.
everything's been working out pretty well. A lot of that, the administrative portion of that job I've been overseeing. And we have a really good inspector, Tommy Nichols, who's been on the job for the last few years, does a great job. And I have to commend him, obviously, this year with the COVID, going out to different locations and still getting safely. He did a great job. So, and as David said, the revenues are still coming in. It's almost self-sufficient because the mandated revenues that we put out there as far as the services, and it's mostly overseen by the state of Connecticut Consumer Protection. So a lot of that stuff was picked up, and a few of the inspections that we used to do are picked up by the state. Larger oil tanks and larger scales, and the oil trucks have been done by the state now. So.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions? Dean, do you have anything you'd like to say about your budget?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do like to say, I would like to thank everybody for their efforts here and in the overall budget. And obviously, Mr. Nichols will keep moving forward to protect the citizens of Danbury as far as consumer protection. And thank you again for your support.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next item is the Unified Neighborhood Inspection Team, the unit.
Excuse me. Thank you. The unit is, as mayor's proposed budget, is $301,000. A small decrease of about $840, and that's mostly workers' comp and I think long sick leave.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Any of the committee members have any questions on this item? Any of the ex officio members have any questions?
Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chianese.
I'm going through the table of organization. What is a city center attendant?
Councilman Chianese, is that for me or David? Are you going to take?
Either one.
Well, Sean, if you want to take a stab at it, go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. Our city center person is the gentleman who co-partners with the Parks Department as well as the unit sharing of the budget. He's a hardworking individual that works downtown, explicitly responsible for the upkeep, maintenance, and cleaning of the downtown sidewalk sweeping, litter patrol, during the city center events, setting up, breaking down the tables and chairs and things like that, the farmers market, watering the flowers, you name it, anything that has to do with the maintenance of upkeep within the city center boundaries.
Okay, I mean, that's not my interpretation of what the unit person should be doing, actually sweeping sidewalks, watering plants. All right, but we can address that at a later time. But the other question is, I mean, how many people actually go out on an inspection besides yourself? Is this you or the unit assistant?
Yes, sir.
So the downtown inspector, what does he do? And the city center attendant? Aren't they working the same thing?
The downtown position is currently an open position.
But it's not, David, it's not reflected here. How come?
It should be reflected here. The downtown, say that again, the
Downtown inspector, it's vacant. But it's it's not a negative like other departments have.
oh, well, because we probably expect to fill it at some point. 28. Oh, yeah, because we expect to fill it. We didn't.
July 1?
We don't know. Honestly, we don't know when it's going to be filled, but we put it in for the full amount because if he doesn't fill it in July 1, he may need the funds for something else. We just, and typically that gives a little flexibility to a department like his, who's, we anticipate given after COVID, he may have his work cut out for him.
And Councilman Cheney's, I'll be meeting with the mayor in the next couple of weeks because I have a proposal to speak with him about, possible suggestions with that position to help increase the coverage for the entire city, not just the downtown as well. As this, I mean, we've been together for, I think this is my 13th year. We pride ourselves on what we do, doing so much with so little, whether it's with resources or manpower or both. We get a lot done, but we also know that we can benefit from another body, even if it's a part-time, to help increase our evenings and weekends coverage as well, that I am the one that primarily does. So I'll be proposing some thoughts with the mayor and seeking his input on that as well, along with the assistance of Mr. St. Hilaire.
Again, it's just a follow-up, and I do agree with you, Sean. Your department has taken on a tremendous responsibility since the 13 years since it was established. We keep adding more and more stuff on your plate, and to do it with one or two people is really remarkable. If you can even do it, there's just so much you need to do. What brought me back to my original question, to have a city center attendant and a downtown inspector, plus you have city center and downtown council, so you got a lot of resources already there to put another person there just for downtown. I think that person can be better utilized for the entire city, especially weekends and nights. So that's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cheney's.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to Sean. Sean, I'm sure you get a lot of requests for service besides people other than myself for things like cars parked on lawns and cars parked in the wrong direction. And this is really a follow-up to what Councilman Shinji was just saying. Does this budget adequately reflect the level of needs going forward? Because you guys do a lot of work and you're spread very thin. And I think what Ben was saying is that if we did somehow extend the scope of the number of employees, we could probably get a whole lot more done and not just tax the existing individuals so heavily. just let us know if this current budget is enough for you to address all of those citywide issues.
If I may, that's why we didn't make any adjustments in that salary to leave the kind of flexibility that you're talking about. And I think Sean already mentioned that he's going to talk to the mayor about how best to address it, because, keep in mind that table of org, we have to pick a point in time, and then when we publish a budget, we go with it. But that, and oftentimes, there could be changes from the point that the budget is printed to the following year or July. And when that happens, we just kind of put the whole thing in there, not knowing exactly if that, especially if it's there's something in the works. And we don't know what the needs are going to be post-COVID. And I think that's what the unit is going through right now. There's a lot of changes that have occurred over the last year throughout the city of Danbury. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of growth that has occurred, as we see in our schools and in certain parts of the city. And so we're going to have to adjust in certain areas. And I think that's what Sean's just trying to tell you, is that we did allow some flexibility. If that's not sure if that's going to be enough, but we think it's a good start for us. So.
Yeah, just a follow-up. I guess too is there something that we can do, this body also within this budget, to help strengthen up various aspects of enforcement and frequency? That's what I'm trying to capture with my questioning. The number of calls that we're responsible to send the unit out versus the level of enforcement. Is all this adequate?
Well, I think just by supporting the budget, Sean's budget as it is, and letting them know that you're behind him is a great start. And knowing that he may need some flexibility in the future helps tremendously. Because he sees the landscape out there, and he knows that his current table of org may not work like it used to work, and so because of the changing landscape, and so that's it helps certainly by having the flexibility of a fully funded open position that he can modify as needed. So,
yeah, just last comment, Mr. Chairman.
Last one, Dwayne.
Like I said, I communicate with Sean. He's on it right away, but I'm just trying to figure out how much one person can, or one or two people can do. You know what I mean? So I'd be interested in seeing what we have and plan going forward to help keep us at a level, at least where we are, and maybe escalate things going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Perkins and Councilman Chianese are on the right track. If there's any person that needs help in getting things done, it's the head of the neighborhood unit. They do a fantastic job with a small amount of people that they have to work with. I'm not going to go into a lot of things. I myself have had to call them several times, unfortunately, and they come and they take care of what has to be done. But I will say, I fully agree. If there's one outfit that needs to be having a few more people to work with, it's the neighborhood unit. They have done a fantastic job in this city in getting a lot of places cleaned up, a lot of things taken care of. And I think it's one thing maybe perhaps that finance director and the mayor and whoever else can sit down someday and get something done for them, to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other ex officio councilmen have any comments here?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. John Esposito.
Thanks. Briefly, I'd just like to echo a lot of the comments and even go as far as saying I totally agree that this is a department that I think is actually understaffed. I think the demand for this department's services is in pretty high, especially on nights and weekends. I'd go so far as to say that I believe that there should be a 24/7 shift. And maybe there is, and I'm not aware of it, but I'd really like to see this department in the future expanded, and increased with personnel, to allow that sort of thing. Because a lot of the violations that this department polices, a lot of cases occur overnight and on the weekends and such. So I'll keep my comment shorter, but it's something I would absolutely like to see in the future, this department's increase. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rotella.
Thank you. I know I'm out of order. I should have gone beforehand, but something did strike me. As several people have mentioned, including Sean Stillman, we've been at this for 13 years. And I just have to tell you, during that time, the city of Danbury has been transformed by unit, also by police and by the leadership of the city. The difference between what the city was like 13 years ago and what it's like today is it's a different city. I mean, we all remember the cars on front lawns and the orange extension cords coming down from attic windows, the illegal apartments. It was just ad infinitum. It was a downtown carnival of lawlessness. I mean, it's low-level crime. It wasn't. We're not talking about gunfights in the street, but there was a reason why unit was formed, and because of unit, the city is a much more functional entity than it was before. It looks better. It's acting better. People are behaving better. Some people just didn't know that we do things a particular way in the downtown, and when they were told, it was a soft touch from unit. It was not confrontational. It was more educational. The people got on board and they using unit as leverage, changed themselves, changed their own behavior, and we are much, much better off. I don't want the impression for Sean that we're making that unit is somehow slacking. It's the opposite. In many ways, they're a victim of their own success. We've gotten better and better and better. We become more sensitive to aberrations, but it's just, you guys have done an amazing job, and my hat's off to you. I do have a quick question about fines. Are they high enough? Are they too low? Sean, what's your position on that? Thank you.
Well, first of all, Councilman Rotella, obviously I really appreciate the warm sentiments, not only from you and everybody else who have joined in to compliment our hard work. We take pride in it. It's thankless work, as every department head can say about what they do, but we take pride in it, and we try to do as much as we can with the limited resources, not by anybody's blame or fault of anyone, but it's just the times that we live in. I would say the ordinances that the council approved for us several years ago are super, super powerful from a standpoint of being able to levy fines up to $100 a day, accruing, for every day thereafter upon getting, this notice in the mail is very effective, because, just getting that notice in the mail is usually the right amount of scare tactic, if you will, that prompts residents into compliance. The challenge to that, and I've discussed this with Corporation Counsel, kind of coming up with additional thoughts or ideas. But the challenge to that is, let's say, Mr. Rotella, I go to your house for a front lawn parking violation, and it continues, and I send you a notice, and you have 30 days to remediate. Then you remove your car or cars, what have you. But then, 60 days later, you do it again. my process of enforcement essentially has to start over. So now I send you a notice and you have another 30 days to remediate. So I think the initial process is great, it's strong, but for the recurring residencies, which by the way is an extremely low percentage, but for those recurring residencies, we may need to discuss and think of additional enforcement methods where perhaps it's a fine right then and there, because there's been a precedent that has already been set of violations. So I will continue to discuss this with Corporation Counsel, Mr. Pinter, and Mayor Cavo to see, what else we could potentially offer to you guys, the council, for additional approvals. I hope that helps answer your question.
It does, and I'll
Right,
tell
thank
you
you.
something. What's funny is that this is a continuing issue. The other cities in Connecticut and New York are not as up to
Mr.
speed
Attell?
as we are in
Mr.
Danbury. This just happened to me this afternoon. A prospect
Mr.
called about
Attell.
an apartment and said, "Listen, I've got a 4-wheel drive. Is it okay if I park on the lawn?" He was from Yonkers. I said, "If you park on my lawn, I'm kicking you out of my house. I'm
Mr.
towing your
Attell,
car and
Mr.
kicking you
Attell,
out."
I'm gonna
Yes.
cut you off there. All right, well, we got to deal with the budget here.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. But thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Sean, and thanks for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Sean, would you like to add anything else, or you have that opportunity now?
Well, just really quickly, Mr. Chair, obviously, and I've already said it a couple of times, it's a pleasure. Every year, I hear a lot of the same things, saying, thank you so much for what the group is doing, for what my department is doing. It's appreciated. And I feel it. I feel the support. You've always been supportive. And I'm grateful for that, for the mayor, Mr. St. Hilaire, and the council. And we'll continue to do, anything that gets thrown our way to the best of our ability. So just once again, thank you very much for all of your support and kind words.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We're at the airport.
Okay. The airport, page 233. As proposed by the mayor, 589,000. That's an increase of $37,339. And that's mostly in part-time salaries. And that is for the I want to call them the retired police officers. They needs to keep
Special police officers.
special duty. Sorry, I'm sorry, the special duty police. And because they need to maintain a certain amount over there. We did reduce this line, but he's going to have a part-time person over there as well. And there's been some adjustments in other lines. As you see, nothing significant, a few bucks here and there, but workers' comp went down a little bit. Electrical services went down, but really the big driver is just an increase in their part-time special police line item.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Any of the committee members have any questions? Any ex officio members have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Cheney.
It just deals with the part-time salaries. Again, why do we need part-time person there? Because I know it looks like you, with the administrator, the assistant administrator, why is there a need for a part-time person?
And I know the airport administrator's on here. It's really for the support staff at the airport. They got a lot of ground to cover over there, but
Never had it before, though. When Paul was there, Estefan was there, and Mike Stefanik, they handled everything pretty much. They didn't have a part-timer.
yeah. Well, we do have special POs over there, police officers, special duty police officers, but I'll let Mike Stefanik take care of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire. Mr. Councilman, what we're doing is we're, as you know, so many years ago, we had a plane stolen from the airport. And
as there are more police officers retiring, we're hiring them as special police officers for the airport. A private duty officer makes about $70 an hour. My special police officers are making about $23. So we're increasing that so we have better protection, better security here at the airport. As we're bringing in more and more expensive planes, we're not bringing in more planes, but the planes are getting more expensive. We have $1 million planes here, and we felt that it was best to make sure we have proper security and also be able to use those special police officers in the roles that they're meant for. This particular year, we have one of my staffers is out on disability workman's comp. So that means I have one person right now to cut 160 acres of grass. And that will augment while he's out probably until past July 1st to help cut the grass. One person to cut all the grass and plow all the runways and so forth. He's kind of tough until my guy comes back, and that's what a lot of this is used for. It's also, we're going to use it to do fence line cutting and so forth. To hire, save a tree or an outside vendor would cost us probably 3 or 4 times as much, where I can devote one person to trim the entire perimeter fence, which definitely needs it. And that's for security purposes also, so we can find gaps in the fence and so forth.
Just to follow up.
Okay.
I mean, I know in the past the fences were pretty bad shape because I live around there, so I see it every day. I mean, have you going to be updating the fences, making them taller? I mean, I wasn't aware that planes are being stolen out of the airport as much as I thought there's hardly ever, except for one time that I'm aware of. But can't that be reimbursed from the FAA for extra security? Or no?
No, the FAA will only pay for capital expenditures, and this is an operations side. When I need a new $1.5 million runway, that's what the FAA will do. This operating budget and so forth, that's on the city to operate.
So a fence, security fences and cameras is not the FAA?
Not necessarily. The FAA did pay for a perimeter fence about 17 years ago, but that was considered a capital, and it wasn't a security fence. It was a perimeter fence built for wildlife purposes to keep deer out.
Okay, so is that something you're planning on doing, is a new fence or no?
We make repairs as we can. We have a lot of other grants that are needed in terms of runway and taxiways that are in the millions of dollar range. That's what our capital is looking at the next few years. So what we'll do is we'll maintain the fence as best we can, and we do it internally with our own manpower. The one thing we have reduced is our operating budget, aside from the salaries, over the last several years because we do more internal than we do hiring outside vendors and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else, ex officio member, have any questions on this item? Mr. Safranek, do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time?
Just want to thank the council and the mayor, as always, for their support of the airport. We are one of the top 3 busiest in New England in terms of general aviation, and that's because of your support and your constant help for us. And any member of the council or any member that wants to get a tour of the airport or see what goes on, please reach out and call me. A couple of you have taken me up on that, and I think you've had some pretty good time when you come out and see what's inside the fence. I see Councilman Esposito. I remember he had a really good time coming down and touring it. Please, if there's any questions, please call. Councilman Rotello calls on a regular basis, as does Councilman Visconti, and I'm always here to help and answer your questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Safranek. Moving on, our next item.
Okay.
Hart.
Hart is, the mayor's proposed is $680,410 flat for the current budget.
Any members of the committee have any questions on this item? Any ex officio members have any
Mr.
questions?
Chairman, I just want to jump
Yes.
in here for a sec, through you to the Director of Finance, Mr. St. Hilaire. Were there COVID Hart grants this year?
We didn't receive any that I'm aware. No, I don't think we got any, but they may have received some. And if they do, they would tend to work it through on the revenue side. I know our revenue has gone up on the Hart side, and you'll see that as well. So I think that went up like $17,000.
Okay, I didn't remember any grants coming to the council. I was just wondering if maybe.
Well, no, you don't, actually, it's not specifically, no, it's not a grant. It's considered one of the revenue items. I'm not sure if it came in before the published budget or I made the adjustment there, but it's $17,000 higher than it was for this coming year, higher than it is this year.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any ex officio members? All right, seeing none. Is there anybody here from Hart to speak? No? Okay. Well,
okay.
Dave, did you want to say something?
No, not on Hart in particular.
Okay.
No, they do a great job in working with us every year on, you know, on both sides of that equation. There's the expenditure side and the revenue side. So.
Very good. Thank you. So next is Publix.
Oh, sorry. Did I miss out on the Hart?
You missed. We're on to public safety discounts.
Actually, there's nothing really discounts, but if we move on to the public safety employee benefit area 2999, this line was kind of lumped in up above under the other salary, other earning area, and that's why you see such a large reduction. And there's just a small amount left in there for miscellaneous items for various other public safety items for other departments. So this we kind of kept it general last year. We put it in a specific department this year. That's all that is.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee members? Are there any questions from the ex officio members? Seeing none, we will move on.
Okay.
Health and Human Services.
Page 272. Okay, Health and Human Services. As the mayor proposed budget is $1,723,000, and that's a reduction of $236,386. Primarily due to the transfer out to special revenue, which was the United Way transfer, and you'll see that later on. So really, it's the health department's budget is whole. It's not going down per se. And again, there's some adjustments in there for some minor items. Workers' comp is minor, all this other stuff. The communication services, that 28 was an estimate last year. That was a pretty high estimate because many of those items are charged out to grants, and of course they're the DMEA staff has a contractual increase.
Thank you, Mr. St. On the committee members, anybody from the committee have any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Rotella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Director of Finance. Mr. St. Hilaire, you know, the health department's getting slammed. I mean, no news there.
Yeah.
We're running the clinic at Rogers Park, and they're helping out at the mall, and they're doing a million other things, reach out and back tracing and everything else. And yet the budget's relatively flat. Where are those funds coming from? I mean, are these all state, federal and state pass-through grants designed specifically for those items?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And you're absolutely correct. Those other items, whether it was related to the homeless or related to the vaccinations or related to this, are all covered in a special revenue fund because they're specific for that purpose. And we do get specific other grant funding for that.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to hear that out loud. Okay, thank you.
I should have addressed that.
Okay, that's fine. No, that's fine, dude.
Any other questions from the committee members?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. DiGilio.
Just a very brief comment that it's no surprise and no news to anybody that on most council agendas, if not all, there is always a health department grant or request. A lot of creativity and hard work being done in the background to supplement the operating expenses and provide services. So just wanted to commend the department on a job well done, and can hopefully we continue to see lots of grant applications that they pursue as a great way of expanding services and supplementing the budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilio.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Santos.
Thank you, sir. Either through, well, actually to Kara, Director Prunty, if I could. I know this year has posed a lot of challenges, especially for your department. The workload, I can only imagine, has doubled. And as we continue in this pandemic year, though there is light at the end of the tunnel, I worry about what is next to come. Side effects of COVID, any kind of other actions that your department will have to take, along with the current job description that you have with all the other inspections and such that you have to do. So my question is, are you comfortable with the fact that you continue to have some other obligations due to COVID? And I understand there are grants, there are funds that come from the federal government, CARES Act, all the assistance that we may get from the state agencies. But do you feel that this budget will be able to get you to do the job that your department has to do, is responsible for?
Thank you, Councilman Santos. Sorry.
Go ahead, Kat. Go ahead, Mrs. Prunty. You have the floor.
Okay, great. So thank you for the question, and it's a great question. And I think that right now, as we've discussed with the finance director and the mayor, that we are still in response mode. So we're still primarily in response. Next year, I think we're going to be in a recovery and rebuilding year, where I think there's going to have to be a lot of changes to the health department. We don't fully understand what we're going to need to do and what our obligations are going to be as a health department. Right now, we're able to do what we need to do because we have the grant funding that we've talked about, and we've been able to fund that and be able to meet the initiatives that we need to. But right now, I don't think that anyone fully understands what the future of COVID is going to look like, and we're trying to make our best guess at that. But, I think that next year is going to be a huge rebuilding year for the health department.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, that's where my concern comes from for you and for your department. What kind of services are you going to need to provide? Are there any side effects of COVID that you're going to have to just have to deal with, right? So, and I'm guessing you're at Rogers Park.
Yes, we had a late clinic tonight.
You're working hard. Thank you, Kara. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, who's that?
About Tabersack.
Mr. Tabersack, go ahead.
I guess for Kara, I'm just looking at the next page where a shelter programs coordinator. I was wondering what the situation with that is. Is there a shelter coordinator still? Or given the fact that we have the Super 8 operating?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that question as well. Right now, the deal is going hopefully through. We are still we're involved, but there's going to be a transition period. We're also anticipating having a liaison type role with the Super 8. I don't think that we're going to completely just abandon ship once everything goes into the Super 8. So we're still going to have a need for, a shelter coordinator.
Okay, so the position is going to be kept then, is what you're saying. Is that what?
That's the plan at this point, yes.
And thank you for the work you've done on the shelter.
Thank you, Councilman.
Are there any other committee members that have any questions on this line item?
Mr. Chair, I got one quick question for David.
Yeah.
Okay.
David, what's the cost of the homeless coordinator? How much are we paying for that?
What's for the homeless coordinator? That's all I heard. What's the?
Yes. How much is in the budget for that? How much are we paying?
For the homeless coordinator?
Yeah, I guess, but Kara is following up on Kara's comment. They're going to keep the homeless coordinator?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay. I think that it's probably about 60 or 70,000, Kara. Is that correct?
78,588 maybe.
Oh, thank you. All right. I didn't have the page open on that.
Shelting Program Coordinator.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's a follow-up, is that role defined of what his duties will be?
Right
I'll
now,
let-
it's right now it's
Okay.
the position that Mike Finn holds. So that's Mike Finn's role. So yeah, I mean, he's still been working this whole time with us in shelter operations.
Yeah, but that has changed since the New Street is closed, so I would
Right.
like to have a detailed description of that position, if I may, at some point.
Sure, absolutely. I will just say that he has been working with us with the Super 8 in the shelter this entire time.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been acting as kind of the liaison, hasn't he, Kara, on this?
Yes.
Yeah, so, he still performs the role. It has modified. I don't think, as Kara mentioned, the job description hasn't been updated yet because it's still evolving. The situation is still evolving. So probably have something post Super 8 closure, probably some period of time after that, once they figure out, what's going where.
Okay, well, as soon as you have it, just get a copy, be great.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Genies. Any other committee members? Any other ex officio members? Mrs. Prunty, would you like an opportunity to say something here about your budget?
Just want to say thank you. Thanks for the support. Thanks for funding our department. I appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next item.
Okay, page 276, Veterans Advisory. The budget as proposed by the mayor is $93,500. A small decrease because there's a decrease in the amount of sick leave that was calculated for that position. So pretty much everything else remained the same.
Are there any members of the committee that have any questions on this item? Are there any members of the any ex officio members that have any questions on this item?
Mr. Chair, one quick question, if I may,
Yes, Mr. Genies.
regarding the Veterans Council money here for the 30,000.
Yep.
Now, I know as of February is only $1,200.
Yeah.
I think that's for the Memorial Day parade. Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I assume that's why it's still 30, because I really think we're gonna have one for next May. Is that why it's still at 30?
Yeah, what typically happens on that, and as you know, the last few years has been a little strange with how much they spend for the parade, or whether they have a parade, or whether they have bands or not. And so what we do is so long as it's related to the veterans or promotes the veterans mission, we may allow some flexibility. So one year they purchased uniforms for the honor guard, and they still had money left over. Another year they helped clean the monuments. They filled some or did some things that they couldn't otherwise do because they didn't have the funds to do it, but they were veteran related, they were items related to the veterans mission and the city's overall mission. So, but this year, they're running out of those items, by the way. Last year, they didn't have a whole lot to do simply because it was in the middle of COVID and people were not in a position to go out and do these things. So, and then this year, because there's no Memorial Day parade, chances that there's not going to be a lot of spending in that area unless they have some special veteran-related projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other committee members, ex officio members have any questions on this? Mr. Hayes, would you like an opportunity to speak on your budget?
I just wanted to thank everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank everyone for their support. Quite a few council members have sent veterans to me, relatives or friends. And I'm just happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, elderly services.
Elderly services on page 280. The mayor's proposed budget is $286,500, a slight increase of $1,189. And that's primarily in salaries.
Okay, any member of the committee have questions? Any ex officio members have questions?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Giglio?
So on the salaries, David, on this, I see salaries regular on top, 159,876, and then salaries, on the table of org, that full amount. But there's also the salaries part-time of 88 and change. Are those salaries? I don't understand where they're not part of the table of organization.
The part-time, no, we show the full-time, but the part-time, we don't list the individual part-timers in there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other committee members?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead,
I know Susan's going to want to speak anyway, so I'll just allow her to speak. And can you give us an update of where the senior center stands, when it's planning on being open, where seniors can once again visit? So
yes, yes, I can. Thank you for the question, Councilman Chinese. We've been very active, and we have been working this entire time, pivoting our programs so we can meet the needs of Danbury's older adults. At this point, we await guidance from Kara and our Ms. Prunty and our Director of Health, as well as the Mayor's office. As we watch the COVID rates, we need to make sure, especially with seniors being an at-risk population, we need to do that safely. There is a plan that has been put forward, and I have worked with the Connecticut Association of Senior Center Personnel. I am a member of that. We have been meeting bi-weekly, and I have will put forward some ideas to see if we can slowly and safely reopen. But we are offering Zoom programming. We are offering grab and go programming. We are processing over 800 rent rebate applications over the phone. We have done Medicare open enrollment over the phone. We are utilizing text messaging, emails. We're working with the library, who has been kind enough to continue tech support for seniors who want to learn how to use Zoom. So we can bring programs like our chair yoga and our line dancing and other wellness programs. Thank you.
May I, Mr. Chair, just follow up with one really quick question?
Yep.
So Susan, I must have gotten at least 6 calls regarding the VITA program. I mean, they're trying to use it, but apparently they're not accepting returns. How's that working?
Thank you for the question, Councilman. We have not had a history of partnering with VITA, so please understand that when I speak to that, I only know that information through using it as a referral source for our older adults. We have partnered historically with AARP, and a proposal was put forward to bring the volunteers back from AARP, and our health director and the mayor's office approved that proposal. And then our AARP volunteers decided that they had changed their mind about that and were not comfortable. That would have involved accepting documents in the parking lot, scanning documents at the senior center. And so we were unable to deliver that program. So we have been making referrals to VITA that works out of the Community Action Organization on North Street. They are doing what I would not call that in person, but seniors are able to bring their documents there. So those who are not comfortable or don't have access to a computer can use that service. And the other VITA office on Deer Hill Avenue, they started with that process, but found there were too many obstacles for that. So they have decided to simply do applications online. I also know that you can file online through the IRS if you meet a certain income level. We have given out that information, as well as through the AARP Foundation online. I hope that does answer your question, Councilman.
Yes, thank you, Susan, for the update.
Okay, any other council members have any questions on this line item? Any other ex officio members? Seeing none. Ms. Tamino, is there anything you'd like to say about your budget? Any comments you'd like?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for the support of the council and the mayor's office. I'll be going into completing my 18th year in my hometown, working to support our older adults. I am still as happy to be there through all of the challenges and difficulties, but certainly to be able to connect with our older adults. I'm looking forward to the day when we can welcome people back, maybe in the parking lot, hopefully in the building, but it'll be nice to have a cup of coffee someday soon with many of our older adults. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next item, elderly transportation.
Okay, on page 283, as proposed by the mayor, $12,000, that's remained flat.
Are there any committee members that have any questions on this item? Are there any ex officio members that have any questions on this item? Okay, is Jacqueline Elam present? Okay, we'll move on. Our next item is community services.
Okay, page 285. And the total amount of that is $321,398. That's an increase of $240,000. As you recall, there was a decrease of $240,000 in health department, and this is where it was swapped from, and or to, I should say. And that includes the Danbury Pale, Downtown Council, and now the United Way. So the United Way funding has been restored to its original amount, $240,000.
Are there any committee members that have any questions on this item? Are there any ex officio members that have any questions on this item?
Just a quick question to the chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Chinis.
Okay, the downtown council, why do we keep giving the downtown council funds since they already have their own budget and mill rate?
Yeah,
David.
This is for the special events. This started years ago. It's really separate from what they're taxing for. This is for really the event piece of what downtown does. And we've kept it separate for that purpose. So it's funding events, not for their general operations.
So it's in their budget somewhere. If we look on their financials.
Oh,
we should see
yeah,
it.
yeah, you should see it there. Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask it during the budget council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from ex officio members? Is Miss Alexander present? Okay. David, there's two items here and I don't know if we cover them, health employee benefits 312 on page 312 and welfare employee service benefits on 312.
Yeah, those, these areas are similar, but they cover different areas. One, it would cover anything under the welfare area, and any code that starts with 5 and any code that starts with 4 would be the health department. And then any of the 5,000 areas like, elderly services or veterans, that's what the 599 would cover. So these are any potential adjustments in salary and any other benefits that may need to be adjusted. So that's what we put these amounts in here for.
Okay, thank you. So we have now run through all the line items under the health, housing, public safety, and social services ad hoc committee. That being said, I'd be looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. DiGilio.
I'd like to move that the Health, Housing, and Public Safety Committee make a recommendation to the full council to adopt the health, public, and public safety budget as presented.
Second.
The second was Mr. Rottello. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor,
Aye.
please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. I would now look for a motion to adjourn
So
So moved.
Second,
by Mr. Santos and seconded by somebody, I didn't catch the name.
DiGilio.
Thank you, Mr. DiGilio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion adjourned, meeting adjourned. And I
Thank you,
believe
Mr.
that we
Chairman.
need to exit here